yeah, this is very exciting for me. This has been a long time coming. And as Johnny mentioned, my name's Tim Harper. I've been here at St. Paul's for 14 years. So for me, this vision process, I was invited into it by Esther at the end of last year. She was having some struggles with the website, and she'd been trying to sort of figure out what to do, and she'd been working with design companies and website companies, and it was just doing her head in. And so she called me in, and she said, look, I just need some new fonts and a color and a layout, and I should have known then what I was walking into. But for me, this vision started Festival One weekend last year. It was not a place I wanted to take a 5-year-old and 2.5-year-old, so we came here to our first service. And it had been a really rough week, actually, because very good friends of ours lost their baby at 26 weeks. And it was just very, it was very powerful at the time. I was very sad. So I sort of came in here really quite sad. And I walked in, and Paul Sorey was leading worship. And I thought, man, what can't this guy do? But there was no one else to lead worship. And there was Paul up the front with his acoustic guitar, going through all the Tim Hughes and Matt Redman bangers that we all know. And I took my spot right where Gemma is up there. I always sit in the same spot. And on came the song we sang this morning, actually, How Great Is Our God. And it would be very dishonest of me to stand up the front here if I didn't give you the disclaimer that I really don't like that song. It's never really done it for me. I don't know if it's the word great. Great's kind of my drive in this morning. Great was the 40th I went to last night. You know, well, actually that was awesome. It wasn't even great. So I don't know, maybe it's the melody, whatever. That song just really didn't do it for me. Because I was already sad, I just said to God, all right, God, you're going to have to static that one. And I'm just going to close my eyes. And if you want to talk to me, then please talk to me. And I closed my eyes, and it's really where it all began. I almost need to go back into it. It was kind of crazy. I was sitting up there, and I was closing my eyes. And as I closed my eyes, I could see this blue smoke coming off people across the room. And it was like one by one by one. And it was sort of started over in this corner, and it was just coming off everybody's shoulders. And it was so real. It was just so real. I couldn't believe it, actually. And I thought, why blue? And as I was thinking about the color, I thought back to when Talia and I were in the Barossa Valley in Australia. We just found out we were pregnant with Henry, and as you do, being at a winery, I bought all these expensive bottles of wine, stupidly packed them in my suitcase, and by the time we got to Melbourne Airport, they had all smashed inside my suitcase, all of them. And so I had to quickly duck across the 7-Eleven, buy the nappy stand, everything in the bathtub, put the nappy stand in, and unexpectedly it turned this kind of blue color. And I think it was just that oxidization process. And I was like, and then it completely disappeared. And it was that blue. And I was like, wow, it's a random vision to remember. And so I thought, well, what is that, Lord? Is that like a purifying? Is it a cleansing? Is it something to do with that? But one thing I definitely knew it was like seeing the Holy Spirit move through this room. And I'd never seen the Holy Spirit before like that. So it was incredibly powerful. As the service went on, Sally spoke really beautifully about encouraging us in our prayer life, and how pretty much if we did nothing else but practice praying and receiving prayer, that would be probably the best thing we could use our time doing. It was very, very challenging. So the altar at the end was filled with people praying and being prayed for. And it was just one of those wonderful kind of times that happen every now and again. And so, as luck would have it, Paul started playing How Great Is Our God again. So I was like, okay, God, great, let's go back to that space. And so I closed my eyes, and this time, the whole room had filled, this blue had gone, and it had just gone up into the entire room was this pink, purple kind of hue, this smoke. And it was probably one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And I attributed that purple to the prayers of the people up the front here. And this kind of release of the Holy Spirit off people's shoulders, that blue color, it felt like a release. And then just this prayer, this prayer life, which was just so extraordinary and it makes us so unique. And it was just so beautiful. So I was so excited, obviously, afterwards, that Sally came over and I told her how great she was, and I was chatting with Tali, and I told them all about it. And then Tali said to me, I'll never forget it, she's like, well, maybe God's talking to you about showing you something about the sort of St. Paul's rebrand, you know, this new vision. And I remember thinking in my head, no. Pink, purple, no, I don't do purple, as Murray can attest, we did not do purple. But I couldn't shake it, and I went home that day, and I was just saying, you know, sort of quietly to God, how would I even describe that colour? What even was that today? And just this word popped into my head, and it was that, ultraviolet. And it's like, okay, ultraviolet. So I Googled it because you can't really type it into Bible Gateway, although it didn't stop me trying. Reflection I made, should use Eugene Peterson's, maybe the Message version. Yeah, he would use that word. I think he would. So I Googled it, and this is the definition: situated beyond the visible spectrum, which I just spoke very clearly to me because obviously I had my eyes closed. It's that black light, you know. So when I opened them, the light wasn't there, but in my eyes and in my mind's eye, that's what I saw. I love books, or I used to love books before I had children, and so I just wanted to know what ultraviolet was as a metaphor. And these definitions came up: love and adoration, something we feel but can't see, and a divine force unseen to the naked eye. And I thought, man, what a beautiful expression of what I felt and what I believed was the Holy Spirit. I had to look on the light spectrum. I remembered my Roy G. Biv, but I was just trying to picture what it looked like. And pretty much that bottom line there is the blue that I had seen kind of evaporating into that smoky, kind of purpley pink light. And I was really encouraged when I saw that. And it's funny, I've shared this presentation now with Johnny and Esther, and the first time I did, Doreen was there, and she looked at it and she goes, man, it's so funny. Our current branding is at the other end of the spectrum. It's the red and the orange. And she said, and it's almost like the last couple of years we've kind of journeyed, you know, through towards this ultraviolet light. And I thought, that's quite profound. I got distracted by Facebook, as you do. And God wasn't to be deterred, though, because this popped up in my feed from my mate James Bowman, who actually recommended me for this job in the first place. Thanks, James. And he put this post up about the Queen, saying she was wearing a colour close to the Pantone colour of the year. And I was like, oh, that's out already. What is the Pantone colour of the year? It's just a colour that comes out once a year. It suggests the trends of what's sort of happening. Anyway, I Googled Pantone colour of the year, and this came up. We are living in a time that requires inventiveness and imagination. It is the kind of creative inspiration that is indigenous to Pantone Ultraviolet, a blue-based purple that takes our awareness and potential to a higher level, from exploring new technologies in the greater galaxy to artistic expression and spiritual reflection. Intuitive ultraviolet lights the way of what is yet to come. And it just kind of knocked me. This is all happening in the same day. And so I just thought, oh, how phenomenal. I then went to Spotify, and that's my other go-to. And God knows me well because Achtung Baby was one of the albums of my university career, and this track is #1 when you type in Ultraviolet. Ultraviolet by U2, Light My Way, and look at these amazing words. Feel like trash, you make me feel clean. I'm in the black, can't see or be seen. Baby, 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 light my way. And it just got me thinking again of that, the uses that we have of ultraviolet light, this purifying, but also this sort of cleansing. And we use it to purify water, and then we use it to also identify things that can't be seen, and under black light. I had considered using another photo for that one, but went against my better judgment. At the service, Paul Sorey had played the song 100 billion times for the first time, well, for my first time. And he wanted to put up a lyric video because he wanted us to listen to the music and the lyrics at the same time. And it was an incredibly indelible experience for me because I just think the words to the song are extraordinary. I'm so glad we sang them this morning. I think they speak to the enormity of God, and a God who, let's just actually look at some of these words. As you speak, 100 billion galaxies are born. I almost can't even comprehend that, and I don't even like to sometimes. It's so overwhelming. In the vapor of your breath, the planets form, but if the stars were made to worship, so will I. And I thought, that's the God I worship, but how often do I act out of that, you know? And I just, sometimes you need to have that sort of reality of who he is and the hugeness of his, but the way that song lands is you're the one that never leaves the one behind. And this was all of us that morning, you know, it was all of us coming in here with whatever we had, and God, through his Spirit, moving through this place, almost like we just had to be here. We just had to turn up in obedience, and he was just here to take that burden off us. And it was such a beautiful picture for this church and this season. The next night with the Grammys, and being a music fan, I watched the Grammys and very excitedly saw Brooke Fraser win, Brooke Lidgetwood, should I say, and she won Best Christian Contemporary Song for What a Beautiful Name. And I knew the song, but I hadn't listened to it much, so I went on Spotify, and there in the album art cover was that beautiful picture that I've been using tonight of the man standing in the light. And God said, that's the picture I want you to use to help explain this. And it was perfect. I had no idea how else I was going to do it. But the performance that impacted me the most that night was by Sam Smith. He had just released his new single, Pray. And you all know Sam. He's won Oscars and Grammys, and he's a massive star. He was here in Auckland a few weeks ago. He's also gay, identifies as gay, and grew up in the Catholic Church. He's had a pretty fraught experience with it. And this is the opening verse of that song. I'm young and I'm foolish, I make bad decisions, I block out the news, turn my back on religion, don't have no degree, I'm somewhat naive, I've made it this far on my own. But lately that shit ain't been getting me higher, I lift up my head and the world is on fire. There's dread in my heart and fear in my bones, and I just don't know what to say. Maybe I'll pray. I've never believed in you, but I'm going to pray. And just something so beautiful about his honesty, and he speaks to the human condition, I think, more than anything. We're built to worship and try and connect with our Creator. And that's exactly what he is doing. And if Sam knows how to pray, then man, we sure as well should know how to pray, because this church should be filled with Sam Smiths in the front row, you know. That's what this place is for. Otherwise, we're preaching to the choir. And so, you know, when this guy's singing, and he's singing this out there, we need to be listening. This is the experience that people are having of church. And we want to be a place that they can come. So I tried to land all my ultraviolet sort of ideas. This had all happened in a 24-hour period. So pulling them quickly, that place beyond the invisible lights the way of what is yet to come, a divine force, the color of prayer, of love and adoration, purification, revelation, restoration, and ultimately freedom. And that led me to this verse: the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And I really do believe that is the call on this church, to be a place where people can be completely free and transformed by God and the Holy Spirit. You will have seen these drawings because Esther's spoken so passionately about them. These were the original architectural drawings for St. Paul's, which we thought we had lost until Bruce came along. But we will be using these drawings over the next few years in our restoration project, going back to actually restoring this place to what it should have always been. And I thought, man, what would that look like behind ultraviolet light? And so I had a little fiddle in Photoshop and saw this. And when I shared this with Johnny and Esther the first time, Esther just said, I don't know about you, but all I can see is light pouring out of this place, light pouring out of these buildings. And I thought, wow, if we can summarize that somehow in this brand, then that would be absolutely amazing. She said, St. Paul's has always been known as the light on the hill. We can't forget that. And it has. We've been here 177 years, the oldest church in New Zealand. And that's how people see us. It reminded me when I looked at these doors of another vision that was equally powerful as the one that I had maybe 10 years ago, walking in and being covered almost drenched in gold. Gold dust, liquid, I don't know what it was, but it was protective. It was almost like an armor for us. But at the same time, it was brilliant in that it was shiny and gorgeous so that when we left here, the world would see us, that we were different, but that we were beautiful and that they wanted what we had. And I had seen that and I'd never really forgotten it. And that just sort of popped back up into my head. At this point, I actually pulled this presentation together and I went and saw Johnny and Esther, and which was just one of those incredible meetings, I think, which confirmed that I knew that I was on the right track. I wasn't some crazy making this up. And Johnny said, please, let's share this with everyone. Let's share this with the vestry. Let's share this with the staff. Let's just invite everybody into this process. I think that was so smart. And it was just such a joy to present to all of them and to get their feedback and emails. And it really sort of helped me move forward. At some point, I knew I needed to start designing, and that's often the hard part. I had this sort of color story, which I was still very afraid of because it was not purple, ultraviolet, so I could try and make peace with that. But we went through this incredible season here at St. Paul's where people were invited to come up the front and share what God was doing in their lives, give prophetic words, and it was really powerful. And it was happening at the same time. I was taking them all in. I remember these amazing words of angels being filled in the sanctuary here, and angels protecting the doors and on the roof, and we were wrapped, protected like angels' wings, and it was really beautiful. And one of those angels was wearing this robe of gold, which was dripping off gold in the way that I had seen it through the doors. And I was like, oh, God, you're so amazingly kind, to give these words to encourage. And I had also seen one day so clearly, Chris was up here, Johnny was talking, and just these sound waves, literally seeing these sound waves bouncing off and out, out and up. And God just saying, I want to use these words, use the music, use the sermons to go further than just these four walls and, change lives. And, light waves and sound waves have got this delicacy to them. So I was inspired by that as I was going through. The Skinner plans I just loved. And when you look really closely, there's this type of sort of style of typography called inline where they're almost transparent. You almost see the light going through it, which I really liked. And also one line follows the other. And for me, that kind of felt like how I'd been listening and responding to the Holy Spirit in this. He goes before us and we just respond. So I really, really liked that. And then I'm not sure if it was Skinner or Chanel number 5, but that number 4 in the corner, I thought that was pretty cool. I remember having coffee with Paul Sori one day. I have no idea how the conversation came up, but we talked about this Japanese method called kintsugi, which is when they break a vase or a plate, rather than glue it back together with transparent glue, they fill those cracks with gold, because the cracks, our flaws, are supposed to be the beautiful parts of us. And I thought, man, that's challenging. How many of us actually sort of fill out our flaws and our cracks and proudly show them? And I thought that was another real beautiful metaphor for the church. I thought that would really attract someone like Sam Smith. That would really attract people if we actually owned our stories and spoke them and they shone out of us beautifully like gold. You can't not be inspired by that rose window. I often just stare at it every week. And this was a photo taken from one event here, that ultraviolet light pouring out. Again, that light on the hill. I mean, imagine if that was lit up, during the winter months. And that's how the city saw us. It would just be extraordinary. So you can't quite see that, unfortunately, but I pulled together a color palette that I had peace about, and I named them basically after everything. My experiences, the sort of infinite nature of God through that song, So Will I, but also the sort of blueprints of this church going forward under the ultraviolet light, and I've called that infinity. The ultraviolet obviously speaks to the Holy Spirit. The smoky light speaks to the prayers from the altar here that came up that morning and went up and out, and God taking these things off our shoulders and turning it into something beautiful. Skinner's ink, the pen that he wrote, those amazing plans with the kintsugi gold, and then the prophetic words speaking of the angels being wrapped and protected by angels' wings. So I sat down at my computer and I played for the 100 billionth time, So Will I, through my headphones, and Pray by Sam Smith. What a Beautiful Name It Is by Brooke. And I just thought of the infinite, how do I capture the infinite nature of you, God, in this? And so I started with the actual infinity sign. And because of Skinner, I'd really liked the inline, drawing that he'd done. I thought that would be a lovely nod. So I started with that. And rather than talk anymore, I'm just going to play you a little video which shows the process from here. So there we are. Thank you. I hope by sharing this story today, when you look at this logo, this brand going forward, that you can see a little bit of the journey and the story in it. I hope that you look at the little rose window up the top there, which is a new icon, was also inspired a little bit by Johnny's talk at the AGM about this place being a spiritual garden. I'm sure he'll probably talk about that soon. But I want you to look at that and see that ultraviolet light pouring out of this place, that's what we're called to do, that our praise and that our worship and that our prayers, our songs, our sermons are going out into the city, but also that we are a place protected. We've been here a long time. We're going to be here a long time still, and we've got angels protecting this place. But that we also have this responsibility to own our stories, to be truthful, to look after each other, to put gold into our cracks, so that's who we are, and that's who people see. And we're established in 1841, and I thought it was important to put that back into our history as we enter into this new chapter. So that is where we've landed with the logo, but there's so much more. There's a website which will be coming. We will have that up by Christmas, I promise. But at the beginning of the year, we also didn't realize that we would be moving offices. So that's been a major influence in this as well. And it's going to be a really exciting journey going forward. For me, it's been extremely humbling, very not normal in how I would approach something. And for that, I'm so grateful to God. I'm so grateful to Johnny and Esther for trusting me and letting me go. And I'm so inspired by the fact that this all came out of coming in here with a sorrowful heart, actually. And God speaking to me through a song that he knew I didn't like. But what I think he was really trying to do was just show me exactly how great he is. And I see that. I see that more than ever. Thank you.